guys, the way you described it, it sounds like you have quite a bit of a commute this time of year.
As far as for cowboying?
Yeah, because you mentioned you'd move back from spring works or something like that.
Well, it's 60 miles of bad roads across and 70 miles of bad roads along. So we got a cow camp on one end, and then when we're working this end of the ranch, we stayed more at headquarters. And then we camped throughout the whole ranch at different times.
Gotcha. And so headquarters is where y'all are at now?
Yeah, our headquarters, yeah.
In town. But historically, for the last 7.5 years, Scott has lived at the cow camp up below a mountain, 80 miles straight west of here. So this is the first time we've had a house in town.
Okay. So then how long have you been working on the ranch, Scott?
8 years.
8 years. Okay.
Hey guys, can you hear me all right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi.
We can hear you.
All right. Are you guys already recording?
Yeah, we're recording. But it's all, I mean, we just started, so we can
we love to
jump
do it
in.
like
I'm
this,
just getting some bearings.
I've got a little makeshift studio. We just rolled into Salt Lake City, so I'm sitting at the Golden Spike Arena. And I've got a much better background over there, but I just can't do my camera the other way. So you guys got my trailer behind me. Great to meet you guys. This is awesome.
You too. Thanks for having us.
What are you doing at the Golden Spike?
Yeah. I am on my way to Oregon. We're going just north of Medford, Oregon. So I'm hauling a horse for somebody, and then we're going to visit a friend. And my wife and I have been traveling around for almost over a month now, I guess. And so that's cool. So you guys are home at the ranch now?
Yep. We're just calling it a day.
Oh, yeah. How's the weather there? Because I just came down in this valley, and man, it's hot here. We've been up in Colorado for a couple of weeks, and it's been really nice. But I know the rest of the world is in summer still.
107 a day. 104 right now.
Jeez.
Dang. What about you, Joe? What's it like back there?
It was really hot this past weekend. You know, it wasn't 107, but I think Central Virginia got into the hundreds, and of course it's way more humid than Nevada is right now. But we've been okay the last couple of days. I was telling them we're just super dry. Like probably the driest summer we've ever had in my lifetime, probably.
Mm. So are you all finished up with branding down there on the ranch?
We're just re-riding now.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess, Joe was just talking about how John Darnell had filled us in a little bit. And John was very sensitive. He didn't want to speak for you guys. He was really honored to get to ride with you guys. He kept saying that. He would say, I don't want to speak for the ranch, but I'll try to tell my experience at the time we were there. And so that was cool. But he was saying how you guys, you just year round.
So we don't pull any bulls. I think we pulled bulls 2 years ago just to see how many really the ranch had. We try to cull bulls every year. After they're 5-year-olds?
No, 6-year-olds. We run them. We buy 2-year-olds and then run them for 4 years and then cull them.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So this is probably a dumb question, but what's the biggest advantage to doing it that way?
A late calf's better than no calf at all.
Makes sense.
I guess would be easy.
On that a little bit.
Well, this is kind of a harvest ranch. We don't have big vaccine. I mean, we vaccinate our calves, but we don't. Our cows don't get fed. They don't get. It's just like it was 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
That being said, we can hit several markets. Like our calves bring more money in the spring because they can go right to grass. So half of our calves will wean in the fall and half of them will wean in the spring. And you can hit 2 markets there. So the fall calves, when when it rains in California and the grass comes good there, we can hit that market when it's good. And then in the spring, feed's drying up in California, we can go to Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Oregon, hit those markets when they're good. Send them to Canada, wherever they need to, wherever the money is, that's where they'll go. Beef Northwest.
Gotcha. So even though it's a harvest ranch and technically you're calving year round, there's still like big surge times basically in the spring and fall.
Yeah, we get a good 3/5 of our calves from Thanksgiving to the first of the year. And that depends on what kind of winter we have and what the feed's like. If it comes early, if the cheatgrass starts in February and the browse starts really good in March, they'll bull. After going through winter eating dry feed, they'll hit that green feed and bull. So you'll get a lot of calves Thanksgiving to Christmas.
Gotcha.
So I think what you're asking is, so we actually have we gather twice a year. We gather with a full crew in the spring and then again in the fall because we calve year round.
And kind of all winter, because the great white cowboy will kick some of them wilder cows off the tops of the mountains and you re-ride and catch them. So when we're done shipping in the fall, we'll usually get another semi-load to ship in January.
Okay. Yeah, so what are the winters like there?
Everything. I've been here 8 years. I've never seen one winter the same as the next. It can be warm and wet. It can be cold and dry. It can be lots of snow and mild. It can be nothing.
And I think because the ranch is so big, the weather, across the ranch, the weather is, the different terrains get different parts of it. So we might have snow on the west end and the north, and then not so much in the middle. And
well, there's 6 mountain ranges through it. So the mountains get a lot of snow and the valleys usually stay open. Only one winter did it snow the valleys up for more than about a week. But usually by noon, the valleys open up. So the cows go up in the summer and down in the winter.
Yeah.
And certain cows got their homes that they just want to go to. No matter where you take them, they'll end up back in a couple of months.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, let me ask you this, and I know Joe was already kind of framing up where you guys are at the Sea Punch Ranch in Lovelock, Nevada, I think.
Yeah.
Could you guys, before we get too far into it, give us a little history of the ranch, at least as you know it? I know that's a pretty legendary outfit. A lot of people know of it. Probably a lot of our listeners will have no idea what it is or where it is at the same time. So if you guys could give us a little history just to kick it off.
Well, it was put together in the late 1800s by a French trapper, I believe, and bought out by the Calve brothers in like 18-something, 90-something maybe. And they owned it until the owners now bought it in 62 or 68, I believe, and they've owned it ever since. So second owner, second largest land size ranch in Nevada. Yeah, it's big, deserty, fun, a lot of work.
Yeah. And they used to have how many camps here and how many cowboys?
Well, 7, 8 camps probably, and they'd usually run a crew in the spring and fall of 10 men. And would run 90 or 100 head of saddle horses.
Wow. Yeah, those outfits, it's, I don't know who still runs.
We lost him.
Yeah, I lost him too. I didn't want to be the one interrupt him. So I have a question. Listen to you say all that, Scott, because it sounds like, at least size-wise, like area-wise, the ranch hasn't really changed. So why from what John's told us, it sounds like the crew's a lot smaller now. So what's changed? Just like the fact that you guys have trucks and trailers now? Or like, why does it take less people?
Yeah,
or do y'all just work
trucks.
way harder?
I think they always work hard, but it used to be. Well, when one of my old buddies was young that worked there, they would trot from camp gathering cows as they went, and then maybe overnight for a night or two and gather and wean, and then trail them weaners home, and then go again. Mm-hmm. They rode everywhere and camped. And having a transient crew where you don't have full-time guys, you just put a crew together in the spring and fall. It's hard. It's hard to get help.
Yeah.
It's just really hard to get help. And so, yeah, you got to be more mobile now.
So,
yeah, that makes sense.
Basically what you can get help, but you can't get the help that you can turn loose really to go do the job that these same guys could do 10 or 15 years ago.
Well,
different
even
class of cowboys.
I'm thinking like the 80s, there was, everybody wanted to be a cowboy, and there was a lot of them. And there was a lot of Indians down the res that neighbors us, that they would come spring and fall every year from their own deal, mostly for reps and, to look for their cows, because none of it was fenced then. On Roe Deer Creek would send a rep, and the Flying M would send a rep. And those guys knew country. And that's the toughest part of having, we haven't been able to get the same people consistently to where they learn the country. So, the first week you gather all the cows and then gather all the cowboys too.
Yeah. I can understand that.
And this ranch doesn't have fences. So explain to him about the fence, the fencing.
Yeah, there's drift fence.
Yeah, it's one perimeter, right?
Yeah. And there's one fence in the ranch. And that fence is off one mountain range where there's no HMA for horses.
So the rest of it's a million acres of open ground, basically.
Yeah, you don't have to open no gates.
So people can get lost out here.
I bet. People get lost in half that size.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we've become a society that can't follow directions anymore. They just want to put an address in their phone. So usually you can hire 14 people and 2 will actually show up. Because they don't know how to get there. They can't.
Like to the camp you're meeting at, you mean?
Yeah.
Golly. Well, in the distances you're talking about, like, it's kind of a time-costly mistake to get lost out there, isn't it? Like, you just try again tomorrow if you don't show up in the right place, right?
Yeah, we've had to rescue a few over or they're broke down, and there's not much cell service, and so you got to kind of meet up. A lot of times I'll meet the crew in town and buy them lunch, and then we'll all caravan out together. That way somebody blows a tire, loses a radiator, whatever. They got help.
Yeah.
Horse goes down in the trail. We've had all these experiences.
Yeah.
It's a long ways across
like
the desert
in addition to being cowboys, are you guys like pretty handy, like rural mechanics, basically?
We're getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can usually get home. It might
more years.
We've wired a few more. We've wired some tie rods on and strip the drive line and come home with the leaders hooked up, stuff like that.
Jeez.
And got stuck. We walked more on this ranch than we've ever walked in our life, probably, or trotted.
We're really big fans of impact wrenches for changing tires. We change a lot of tires.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, we could get a job with a pit crew somewhere now.
Yeah.
Got it down to science.
Yeah, because you were talking about 60 miles on a bad road, right? Like unpaved road.
No dirt.
Yeah.
It's all dirt.
Yeah. Well, before we get too far away from it, I'm interested too. You're talking about this harvest model where it's like how it was, 100 years ago or whatever. If you're one of these people that gets into like they've got like the ranching for profit school and things like that, and everyone in different parts of the country, they ranch different ways. But it seems to me like that would be a fairly low input model as in terms of like how the cattle are concerned. Do you guys? So you already said you don't feed them. Do you guys like
No,
have to put mineral or salt or anything, or are they're out there and what you get's
certain
what you get?
times on the mountain they'll eat salt, but when in the flats there's so much salt brush and shad scale and white sage they won't eat salt. And the cows we're raising now are getting to where they can eat protein, but the old cows when I first come here, they wouldn't even touch it. They didn't even know what it was.
Yeah, and obviously that's a commercial model, but is there kind of a like a dominating breed, or like when you go to buy bulls, what kind of bulls are y'all looking at?
Well, we're just kind of changing back a little bit now and putting some more ear in our cattle. But when I first got here, it was predominantly Angus bulls and crossbred cows. Because
Okay.
in the West, you got to run a cow for your country and then a bull for the market. So,
Okay.
kind of like everywhere else,
Mm-hmm.
something that'll range from water and keep her belly full. And I'm not real. Horses and dogs and cattle to me it's more about the individual. So we've raised some really good Angus
Sure.
cattle here that maybe got a tick of ear in them or maybe none at all that have been raised
Right.
here, and they're really good cows.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't bring a cow from anywhere else here, and she just don't do very good for a year or two till she figures it out.
That makes sense. Well, yeah, because I'm thinking, I'm sitting here in Virginia on a ranch, and we run Black Angus and Black Simmental, and I can't imagine just taking the Virginia Angus cow and moving it to where y'all are at right now, right? Like that's a death sentence for that cow, even though technically they're the same breed, which kind of goes back to what you're saying. It's more of it's an individual, and you've got to get whatever, like I've heard them call it the epigenetics. You got to fit whatever fits your environment. You can't get so caught up on papers.
Or you could bring any kind of cow here as long as you got it off their mothers. Got them as a 9-month-old and turned them out, and don't
Okay,
expect
you think so?
Yeah, and don't expect nothing out of them until they're 3 years old.
The
Okay.
cool thing about this ranch and what Scott's done is because the way that they run outside, our cattle can go anywhere. They can go back to another range. They can go to the desert. They can go to pasture.
Like we could send our cattle from here to you, and you would be. They'd probably get washy, like you usually have more rain.
Oh yeah.
Than you have right now. So they'd probably be washy for a while, get kind of hollow, till they figured out how to get. Because our feed's hard, really hard. Like 50% of our feed is browse, that is all higher in everything than alfalfa. So, and anytime it rains, it don't matter if it's August or January, something's going to green up. That's, we don't have just 1 or 2 grass species. We got 5 or 6 browses and 7 different grass species, and they all grow at different times. So anytime it gets wet, something greens up and it grows. And them cows know it, so they just go use that, and then they go on to the next.
Okay.
They just revolve around, kind of like going to the buffet.
Yeah. Yeah.
You kind of get all you see that.
Well, yeah. Well, and that's the cool thing too, is like most animals are pretty kind of inherently know what they need, right? Depending on time of year or like where they're at, like if they're carrying a calf or something like that. Like you said, if they're there a couple of years, they kind of figure that out for themselves, and you don't have to hold their hand through the whole deal all the time necessarily.
No, because some of them cows you might only see once a year.
Yep.
Because them old cows that are smart, when you start riding and they see them trailers, they might go in yesterday's circle or next week's circle or last week's circle, or they don't want to go with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
The one cool thing about here is we've had some guys that have worked for us that come back that buy our cattle, privately, whether it's bulls or heifers, because they can go anywhere. So we've got one guy in particular that's bought 2 sets of heifers that he just loves, and our bulls, because he takes them to Oregon and they just, they're so used to working hard that country's easy for them.
And they get gentle.
Mm-hmm.
Because we do everything horseback. So he can move them by himself, and we spend a lot of time holding them up, and we only sort and roe deer. We don't ever in and buy them down an alley. We roe deer them all. So they get, I mean, you wouldn't want to get off your horse and walk through them afoot. They might jump on you then, but horseback you can. So he can take them up there to that tough country in Upper Oregon and put them on that mountain. And they've lived together. They got weaned together. They run together. And then when they go there, it's one whole deal. They just stay together. It's not like putting a bunch of different cattle together and trying to. Mm-hmm. So they're all figuring it out together. Mm-hmm. So.
Okay.
And he's made a lot of money.
Yeah, that's cool.
Because then he'll bull them heifers, and then he markets them as either breds or as first calf pairs. Which, if we had.
Yeah.
We've been going to do that for quite a few years, and just we don't have the infrastructure to. We got the country to keep them separate, but to handpick them bulls and then make sure they stay with them heifers and breed them the way you want, and then market them as breds or yearling pairs, it just you ain't got the help and the infrastructure to do it yet. Maybe down the road we'll quit selling them females.
Sure.
And sell them as breds ourselves.
Yeah. That was one thing John made the comment on was whether it's just the style or because you don't have fences or maybe because you don't have the manpower, he felt like there was a really big emphasis on everything needs to stay like as calm and gentle as possible, right? In terms of like when you hold up or when you sort in the roe deer. And he felt like he really liked it, but it was different from other places he'd been at in terms of the attitude once you've got everything gathered. Can you talk about that for a while? Like, is that something that's maybe just common to that part of the country? Is that something you've tried to implement since you're managing the ranch? Like, talk about how you handle your cattle once you've maybe gotten to a place and made the circle.
Well, as far as the way things were done, yes, that's how it was done. The whole time I've ever been. I'm from Idaho originally, and it was done there, and it was done here. Your cow was making you money. We've lost a lot of that through the years predominantly because of Angus cattle. Because, if you revised all your working alleys and everything to where they could back down and then back on the truck, it would work pretty good for Angus, but we've lost a lot of stockmanship because of them, because, you've heard epic stories everywhere in the world about runbacks and won't mother up. And that's predominantly due to cattle that get fed in the winter. So for us, and the way I think, is everything, it don't matter if it's a cow or a horse or a person or a dog. Everything you do right now is just shaping next time or tomorrow or next week or next. I mean, we're all stewards of the land, and we're stewards of our. So if you hard ass your cows today, she ain't going to trust you next time. Or you take them somewhere where there's no feed or water and they got to go back. Next time you take them somewhere, they ain't going to go. So everything we
Mm-hmm.
do with our cows is, and because we ain't got much help, and a lot of times we got to, just me and my wife got to do it, or me and maybe one other guy, or me by myself, or my wife by herself, or she's got to go 40 miles down by the res and get some cows from them guys, and I got to go all the way north and get some cows off the neighbors or something. If you muscle them cows around with a crew, one person ain't going to do nothing with them except for kill their horse and be pissed off. So we are always constantly, and it's a struggle because a lot of times the time it takes today is going to save you tomorrow. But the time today and getting people on board with that, they don't understand it, because maybe the last place they worked, they just, mash 300 cows in the trap and then let the cows walk by them like you're the invisible cowboy and hold their calves and then just go at them like, we got to get this done and get branded and so we can get home and get our hay mowed or watch TV or whatever. And then they just shotgun the calves out with their cows and then leave and then don't go back. You hear horror stories of leppies and runbacks and well, them cattle are important to us, and that calf's important to us, cause especially like a year like now when they're worth so much money,
Mm-hmm.
So that's always been my horses, my dogs, my kids, people, it's all the same. It's everything you do today, it's just shaping next time and tomorrow. So we always handle them cattle to make them the best they can today. And sometimes it ain't the best, but just like your colt, if you get some improvement or if it's better than you started, then you got something to build on next time. If it's worse, shit, can't even start over, You got so much scar tissue to get through. So that's why we do it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that, and I really like that philosophy. Right? I've heard it said different ways, but as you said it, it's shaping tomorrow what you do today. Can you? So I just want to make sure I understood what you said at the very beginning. You felt like the introduction and the rise to prominence of Angus cattle is related to a lack of stockmanship today?
Oh, absolutely. It's ruined cowboys.
Okay. Can we break that down? Because I would love to hear this take on how that's related.
I think the industry too.
Well, it's ruined the industry as well, but I mean, and props to those guys.
I'm not disagreeing with you or anything. I've just never heard anyone say that before, so I'm curious.
On these ranches in Nevada, it used to be you snuck around, you'd trot out in the morning, and you'd go way around where you knew them cows was, and you made sure you started them the right way, because if you didn't, you was going to get your ass kicked. They were going to run off, and you ain't going to get them stopped. See, so it was like gathering horses or anything, any animal. You had to start them the correct way, and then you had to handle them the correct way to get what you want. Well, hell, now we've all been around them Angus cows that if a hay truck goes by, they'll leave their calves and just go, and then everybody else just brings the calves in the calf drive or something of that nature. And a lot of these young guys that are starting now I don't know if they've never seen it any different. So they just get behind the suckers and start whipping and slashing and cussing and hating every minute of it and almost making it worse to where there is a run back because that's what they've seen. That's what they know. They've never seen it no way. They never had a cow that would get away from you, see you or hear you and just be gone.
Right.
And that's part of that's part of the industry that's just maybe gone forever as a whole. I mean, there's still places that's tough, like here or Arizona or, I'm sure there's tough country everywhere, and you'll still find people everywhere where even maybe down in the bayous where certain cows, you just got to go about handling them the way that you need to get it done so you can get it done, or you're going to be dragging them out with an airboat or, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. But you feel like because Angus typically are more dependent on feed and just kind of disposition wise, they're a much more domesticated acting cow. That's kind of changed the dynamic.
I don't know if it would be called domesticated because they get mad really fast. Like,
okay,
it's in the breed, and it was selected at some point way back to where she came home. She come home. You shake the grain bucket, she come home. It gets snowy and tough, she comes home. So if they're black, they go back. If you got a bunch of Angus cows, it takes 4 times to get them where you need them to go. And then they might grub it to the dirt, and it'll take you 4 times to get her out of there because they just go home. They go where they know.
Mm-hmm.
They travel with their ears back. If you touch them at all or hoorah them all, they just hit the ground and start backing up. It's not in them to. So we spend a lot of time.
They're not
training.
Freed up.
No, we spend a lot of time training. And you see a lot of weaners or calves or even loading cows. They put on their MMA gloves and they get in there with them, shock the shit out of them, whip them over the ass, and put them on the truck one at a time like a bunch of chairs. Never just ask the lead to go and ask them to go with them. So we spend a lot of time because we got Angus cattle to get away from, and then we'll take the pressure off. If they go up there and come back, even when we're roe deer, like we wean different than everybody I've ever worked for. We roe deer them weaners out away from their moms and load them. So that they know what a horse is from day one. So you teach them from then to get away from you. And sometimes it's tough, and sometimes they might get drug away from their mom with their rope. But the next time you go to do something with them, they'll get away from it. Maybe it'll only be 10 feet. But as long as you don't cover them up, they'll just keep on going. Just keep walking at them. They'll just keep moving away from them. Just like starting a colt. Teach them to move.
Yeah.
Start, and stop.
And it's not so much fear that we're talking about. It's respect for that horse and that cowboy asking that cow to move. So we have eared cattle and we have Angus. And the biggest thing is when we brought those eared cattle in, because Scott kept telling the ranch manager, listen, you need something that's going to travel and utilize as feed and water. The Angus are not it. But the market, the marketing of the Angus and the selling of them has predominantly, made the most money. So he really had a problem. Well, we brought in some of our own eared cattle on a deal with him. And I mean, the difference was night and day. We had to send somebody to the traps when we were trailing these cattle, because if we didn't, those eared cattle would be there and gone, while we're still trailing the Angus.
They'd be there walking the trap, get a drink, and then just turn around and say, okay, well, we'll see you. Nobody's here.
Where the Angus cattle won't really move across this ranch, we brought these cattle in that weren't from this country, that were raised. We got them as heifers in town, really, and bought them. And heck, some of them have left and are 70 miles away from here on their own. Whereas these Angus cattle, they won't go that far, and the bulls will definitely
stay. You'll see them in a different part of the ranch every week.
Yeah, they travel and move and take their babies with them. Where in Angus, he's talking about. So for us, when we finally started kind of showing the ranch manager the difference, that was kind of proof in the pudding for him. Not that we're against the Angus, we're still going to keep those bulls, but we put a little bit more of that ear in there, because for this ranch, they've got to utilize that feed in the country.
Mm-hmm. Well, even Angus.
Even the old Herefords and the old Simmental cattle, you never saw them babysitting 5 or 6 calves. They stayed with their calf. They kept their calf with them. When they went to go get a drink, they brought their calf with them. And if the calf couldn't go get water, she didn't go either. But you see them Angus cattle, there'll be a cow with 8, 9 calves, and everybody's at the bar having a drink. So that's one big difference between them.
Yeah. Which is interesting because you're talking about the marketing of Angus cattle, and a lot of times, like, there'll be guys who like talk about like, yeah, Angus, those are mama cows, right? Like that's kind of how they're portrayed to the public. At least some of the guys I've been around portray them like that. But of course, it's kind of a different deal where we're at. So you think about Angus, right? It's a Scottish breed, so it probably didn't matter, right? On your however, you got 1,500 acres in Scotland or whatever that you're grazing. Probably didn't matter if the cows acted like that.
Yeah, and they probably had really good dogs and went through them every day.
Yep.
And brought them home at night so the neighbors didn't steal them.
And water. Our water's a long ways apart.
So yeah, anyway, as far as stockmanship goes, I mean, yeah, there's still stockmanship with black cattle, but it's you see it,
but that's great.
It get worse every day. Every day. That's why. Hell, all the way till I was 25, we never had hot shots. A trucker might have one once in a while, but hell, we never needed them. We were trying to stop our cows.
Yeah.
And now you hear people shoot them with shotguns and everything, trying to get them to go. So, it's just in the breeding.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I think you're right. It sounds a lot like working colts, right? It might be like if you're used to like ranch colts that live outside all the time, and then all of a sudden you get a few colts that like grew up in someone's backyard, you're like, what's wrong with this thing? It's not, it doesn't act like it's supposed to, it's on top, it's in my pocket all the time. It's supposed to kind of be over there when I walk into the pen with it.
Yeah, and won't cross water if he was dying of thirst, and stumbles across the pavement.
Yeah. Cool. Well, so another question I had for you guys was, you're talking about making camps. Like you said, you had a spring camp. Now, what does that look like exactly? Is there like a house there you live in, or is it a true blue camp, or how is that set up for you guys these days?
House and cookhouse, and big set of corrals.
Okay.
Mostly because the guys we hire now, they bring their own horses.
Yep.
So everybody's got to have their own corral. I won't put them horses together. Now, if you come help me and my horse cripples your horse, it doesn't cause any hard feelings, If your horse cripples your horse, that's on you. But
yeah,
so that's why we do that. Do it that way. Where before when the ranch had a big calve, they just rode ranch horses. But you run out of guys that could ride them too, because them horses might get rode a month in the spring and a month in the fall, and that's it. So, the first week might be a little rough on them. To get them shod and rode. And,
altitude, different hay and feed.
No, I mean the old ranch horses. So.
Yeah. So, were you, when you're talking about, have you ever worked on a ranch where that was the situation? Like they had their own calve?
Oh yeah,
you had to
lots of them.
go in and just.
Yeah, I was 30 years. I was probably 30 something before I was ever on a ranch that would even let you bring your own horse.
Okay. So yeah, let's talk about that, because as you kind of alluded to, that's not really the case most places anymore, right? It's if you're going to hire people, they're going to bring their own string with them. what's it? What's the difference? Say, like you said, you go there and it's like they're going to get a month in the spring and a month in the fall, and they're just going to kind of be left to their own devices, similar to what you were talking about with the cattle. What does that look like when you bring those horses in for spring works? Is it just like you spend a week shoeing horses before you start branding calves, or
Yeah,
how
and
does that go down?
they still do that in Arizona. Like the Diamond Day and some of them big outfits they got, and they call them guys wagon trash. That just show up for the wagon in the 2 months in the spring, 2 months in the fall, and they got a whole bunch of horses that, all the great ones are creamed by the full time guys. So all the colts and maybe the Broncos, or maybe one that's hard to shoe, or maybe one that's just a rock pounder, not real good at anything else. They get kind of left to the part-time guys. So you got to kind of have the mental fortitude to show up there and just ride what they cut you.
Yeah.
Here's your horses. Get her done or get the hell out of here. So, and there's just not many people left that will do that.
Sure. Yeah.
Or can do that.
So, well, yeah, it's kind of like you alluded to with help at your place, right? It not only is it like there's less people doing it, but it's kind of a dying skill set.
Absolutely.
I don't think as a whole, like the Western lifestyle or cowboying or anything like that is going away, but it's definitely different. It's a lot different than it was. Yeah. Yeah. And so, like, when did you first get on a setup like that? How old were you?
16, 17.
Okay. And was it very much did you feel like there was a lot of guidance offered, or was it kind of a shut up and let's see if he can figure it out type of mentality?
Both. But they guided you in the old way of calling you a dumb son of a bitch every time you screwed up. Scream at you.
Okay.
And then if you did it right, they just wouldn't say nothing.
Okay. So the good days were quiet days.
Yeah. And maybe it was just your turn. Maybe you didn't do anything wrong, but you were the closest to the boss and it was your turn to take the ass chewing. So you had to kind of decide if he was really mad at you or just at the whole world.
Great. Sounds awesome. Did you, I mean, obviously you didn't have a choice and you're still ranching today, so you got through it. Was that like a learning curve for you, or did you just?
No, I was pretty much.
Was there a time you remember? Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I figured.
Just like every other Gen Xer. I mean, we didn't have phones. We had to make our own fun. So, yeah, you lived through it or you died. So, I mean, there wasn't any other. Gotcha. And back then, if you didn't like it and you rolled your shit and left, that's fine, because there was 9 other guys that have that job tomorrow. Because everybody wanted a job. Well, hell, now nobody wants a job.
Yeah. Well, so go ahead, Ben.
I was going to say, talk about that. How hard is it to hire now? Do you guys have trouble with that?
Oh yeah, it's hard because the workforce is so small now in agriculture because they've been starved out for 40 years. You got to love it to really want to do it. That there's not 9 guys wanting that job. So shoot, all the really good cowboys they're running an outfit, or maybe even running 2, or and trying to find help to do that too. So yeah, you end up with a lot of green people and people that really like the idea of it, but they're not so much maybe like the whole work part of it or how hard it can be. Because we become a society that if you take a class or you watch a YouTube video, I mean, you can pretty much do anything. Wire a light socket or drive a semi or fly a spaceship to the moon. Hell, it takes a lifetime to be a cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, there's probably a lot. I'm sure there is a lot of desire, but when they show up and work for a little while, they change their mind. So, do you guys, like, I'm sure back in the day, they were beating guys off with a stick who wanted to ranch, and that might have been 40, 50 years ago. But today, I mean,
even 30
are
years ago.
you guys or anyone else starting to change your incentive structure at all, or offering anything, or changing the way you try to hire people to make them want to stick around, or is it just kind of come try it out? If you don't like it, so long, because that's part of it too, right? Is if people want good employees, you've got to figure out how to lure them in, bait with the carrot, so to speak.
Yeah, there's some of that, but one of the main things a lot of people don't ever understand is you also have to become a psychiatrist and a teacher and a philosopher, because to unlearn some of these learned belief systems out there that just because you show up means you get a trophy and that you're awesome at it. In my day, you just got screamed at. And they probably did it for a reason, because it would jerk the cowboy out of people that weren't going to be cowboys anyway. And there was another guy down the road. So the sooner you got the hell out of there, they could get some help. So now you've got to learn how to be a mentor and nurture that want to without jerking it out of them. Because, man, that's easy to jerk it out of them now.
Yeah. But I imagine at the same time, it's not just that there's less people that want a job, but it's what is that? But it's the way they were raised, back, 40 years ago. A lot of people, especially out here, were raised to fit a job like that. And whether it was on a ranch or pouring concrete, your upbringing kind of prepared you for that. And today, you don't have that. So what you're saying makes sense. You have to, they might show the interest, but then you have to become the psychologist and show them. It's almost like the Navy SEALs look like a really,
You have to change your approach to how you go about teaching, because people can't take criticism, even if it's constructive criticism. They get so offended anymore. As a whole, I think from McDonald's to the White House is probably the same. Nobody can take being told how to do it your way. Everybody's got an idea how they want to do it their way. At least that's what I've run into. And ranches have been fenced up and cattle have changed, and maybe their way worked really good where they were at in Wyoming or Alberta or Mexico, wherever. But ranching is so site specific. What works here ain't going to work in Virginia, and what works there ain't going to work in Florida, and what works in Florida, it's so site specific. And the program that they have, that you have to have a pretty open mind and want to see something different and learn something different to go to the next ranch, because it's going to be different. It could be the same cattle, the same kind of as the ranch you were at before, but.
Mm-hmm. Well, I would be curious what you think about this, but from my perspective, today, if a guy goes and gets a job somewhere and you're getting paid $100 an hour, just some kind of high-paying job, you're getting paid well, so you can set aside your ego and you do a good job, and that's that. You're getting paid well. Now, when it comes to cowboying, it seems to me like a lot of guys, they're not going to get paid a ton, but they have a lot of pride in being a cowboy, and that's going to be a big part of it. They get a real sense of ownership out of being on an outfit, being a cowboy, being skilled and all that. So maybe, your pride then takes over a bit more, because you're thinking, well, I'm not getting paid that much, but I'm a cowboy, and this is my badge of honor. So, and then without, having as much hard work ethic in their background, they're, just being kind of a hothead. And that's what I was wondering about the incentive structure. Like if anyone, I don't know, like if you changed it to where it just seems like in this culture, especially a kid that comes out of the city or the East or somewhere where there isn't a lot of ranches, if they're darn set on going to be a cowboy and that's going to be something they want to do, they're probably not doing it for the money. They are doing it for the lifestyle. But if they don't have a good background, it's going to be really hard to get them to listen and be humble. Whereas I imagine if they were going to get a job on a ranch and get paid a ton of money, it would be a totally different incentive for them, and they'd probably just shut up and listen. But
well,
it sounds like either way, you got your work cut out for you.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept because Nevada is mining and agriculture. And I know a lot of guys that were cowboys that went to mines, and then maybe they were a laborer for a while, and then pretty quick they drove a haul truck, and then they run a dozer, and that's the highest paid job. So they're a $45 an hour dozer hand. Well, when that mine shuts down, you think that son of a gun goes and runs a haul truck or runs a backhoe for $20? Hell no, he's a dozer hand. He wants 45. So they'll go on unemployment until they get that dozer. It's just human nature. We don't like to go backwards. Yeah. So if you paid these cowboys $100 an hour, you would have exactly the same as you have now. You would have 1 in 10 that owned their job and lived by their code and had some integrity, and you'd have 9 other guys that $100 just ain't enough. Because that's human nature.
Yeah. It's all just going to be relative.
Yeah. You can change the game however you want, but the players are going to be the same. Because that's just human.
Okay.
In my opinion.
So here's a counterpoint to that, though. And obviously, so my counterpoint to that would be you're paying the Cowboys $100 an hour. Maybe you go back to how it was where there's 9 other guys in town who will take your job.
That could be.
Does that change the dynamic at all?
I think the whole world dynamics changed because, like, I don't know how old you guys are. Were you born in the 70s, 80s, 90s?
No, we're like mid to late 20s.
Okay, so yeah. I was born in the 70s.
We're both in our late 20s.
Yeah, see, so I'm almost 50. And when I was a kid, not only did 9 guys want your job, but 9 illegals would come and do it for less. Everybody wanted it.
Yeah.
Well, you can't even get an illegal to do it now. Nobody wants a job anymore. So that whole dynamic has changed so much because it was all about, back then it was about having a job and they were really promoting college and careers and really getting your shit together. Well, heck, now nobody really, they want a check. They don't really want a job.
Yep.
And I don't really blame them. I mean, if you'd have told me in the early 90s that someday a girl could take pictures of herself with her phone and sell that, and that could be her job, and she could never leave the house, I'd have thought you just flew in on a space shuttle because that was so boring.
And not even just be her job, but create generational wealth. I mean, it's
generate money. You see these people that I don't understand it, but I hear it all the time. People that are OnlyFans managers or what they call them the other day, people that just social media that just do stuff on promote stuff on social media, and they're making
influencers
good money.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That wasn't the option back then. It was go to work or die. Starve to death. So So the whole dynamics in the world have changed.
Yeah. Do you feel like that's maybe a comment on us as a society? Because say everything hits the fan tomorrow, we don't need like girls posting pictures of themselves on Instagram, but we do need food. but we as a
Yes,
society are clearly placing a higher value on the pictures on the internet, right?
I believe so. Yes,
Yeah,
as of right now,
it
and
seems like it.
until something like that happens, I don't see it ever changing because so many people you hear about it or see it all the time. They think their food comes from the grocery store, or
Mm-hmm.
or we get it from Brazil or some faraway place. But the minute that
Yeah,
truck will show up with them groceries, well, hell, look at Katrina or any other disaster. I mean, it just turns into the Lord of the Flies like almost immediately.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. I remember I was a freshman in college, and I was in a class, some like extra class. It was like a religion class or something. So it was like all the different majors.
Mm-hmm.
And then I told a guy I was going to my animal science class after this, and he just like didn't understand. He was like, "Why would you do animal science?" And he was like an engineer or something. And I was like, "Oh, well, I want to do this." And he was like, I don't see where there's any value in that now that we get food from grocery stores." And this was like a 19-year-old. And me growing up in agriculture in like kind of a rural area, this guy was from uh, just outside of Washington, D.C., which might not be a shocker. But I didn't realize there were people who thought like that until I got to college. And then I met a bunch of people that were like, they don't like understand how this all works.
Mm-hmm.
And they just, which, I mean, I guess if you grow up like that and you never get outside the city and you're not educated, you can blame parenting, blame education, blame whatever, but they just don't know about it. And it's not necessarily their fault, but it's still not a good thing.
And you hit the nail on the head there. We only know what we know.
Mm-hmm.
What's
Yeah.
and some of
Well,
these
and
people
that goes
just
back
don't
to the
know.
ranch. Yeah. That goes back to the ranch thing, right? It's, you were talking about how it's harder to get help, and the people that do come and help, they don't have the skill set like they did 20, 30 years ago. But at the same time, one, you already said they can't take an ass chewing, and two, an ass chewing wouldn't even help because it's like no one taught them. Like
Yeah, they
there's
don't
no
know.
way they could have known how to do this stuff anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
the ass chewing might make you feel better, but that's about all it would do.
And it don't. It don't. It's like I said. You dang sure have to learn how to. And it's been a struggle for me all the time of being able to, because it's twice a year at least, if not 5 times a year, going through the same start at the basics. This is how we do things. This is what I expect. This is what we're going to do. And even somebody who's cowboyed for a few years, or maybe even a lot of years, ranching is so site specific that it's going to take a minute to figure out
Yeah.
and try to be some help.
Mm-hmm.
And don't let him fool you. That incentive for him is not giving you the butt chewing. He's very old school. So quiet days, we love quiet days. We don't see many of them.
That's
So,
great.
so let me ask you about this. With a lot of desire in people, especially with Yellowstone, and we've talked to other people in the horse community over the past year or so, and they've had a major influx in the horse world, and even in music and movies and stuff. But Yellowstone and other westerns like that coming out, and that's kind of spurred a lot of desire. So you've got all these people, they want to be cowboys. Then you've had these ranching schools, people do internships and stuff like that. You had experience with anybody coming to you that's come from some kind of ranch school, and do you think that's beneficial if it's done right, or would you rather see cowboys that work for you just learn at your place um, versus going to some ranching school and getting some of the basics taught to them?
I don't know that we've had anybody that had went to some kind of school other than the hard knocks school, you know.
Yeah.
Josh and Glenn went to class. We did have a couple that actually have been great help, and they do come back that didn't necessarily go to school. They ranch a little on their own. They run yearlings in.
But he's also cowboyed in 14 states and seen a lot of, you know, he's got a big toolbox, and maybe most of them tools he don't need here, but he's acquired a lot of skills.
But he took a lot of classes and different things too, which I feel like they really wanted to learn. You know, came with that mindset of they knew what they knew, but they wanted to learn other stuff. Like when John showed up. So I think to me, it's more determination. And the only thing I can say to that is the ranch. Our manager passed away, and they put out a job application with the King Ranch, and the people that actually applied for that, we were scared for them to come in and manage it because we didn't feel like they had enough education to come in. So the ranch itself just decided to keep Scott over the cattle part and then a hay guy over the farm, a farmer guy instead. So we haven't had a vast experience of young people coming in that way, I don't think.
Nobody that's been to a school per se, because this would be like getting out of basic training and then going straight to Green Berets. You know, with going to, Ranger school and jump school and all that other stuff first. This is kind of, because there's no fences and you can get lost and you need a big motored horse that might buck your ass off sometime. And, you got to be proficient with the rope and know when to rope and when to leave it tied to your saddle. I mean, this is good hands. There's good cowboys everywhere. And I've had a lot of them come work for me from everywhere. And they all, within a week, boy, because they got some skills, they can meld right in. But for a brand new green guy, this probably isn't the place for them because they're going to be so frustrated and get their ass kicked by these wild cows so many times that they're just going to say, this ain't for me. They need to go to them fenced in deals first and learn that. And then maybe bigger places that have allotments that you move throughout the year and learn how to re-ride and how to find a cow and what a track means and what trails mean and that kind of stuff, and re-ride that country in more of a set environment and figure that out and count them through the gate and know they're clean. And then they could come here maybe and be able to catch, get it. When I first come here, I shipped 3 semi-loads the first winter of just yearlings and bigger that were slick that never seen a cowboy. So, and I spent a lot of time in years before catching wild cattle and gathering horses for the government and, that kind of deal, that I had enough skills and I refined them here because what I did the first year here, I don't do anymore, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, can you talk about, maybe not everyone who listens to this will know what a slick is. Can you talk about what that is? Because John mentioned that when we had him on too.
Just an unbranded calf that might be at any age. The first year I was here, we got some 5-year-old bulls that had never been branded, never been corralled, never been anything, fed hay, just never even seen a cowboy. Or if they did, they got away.
Sure.
And they don't exactly get trapped either. I mean, a lot of times he will rope them and lead them or drag them in a trailer. It's not like they just go along with you.
No, it's work.
It's cat and mouse a lot of times with these cattle like that.
So slick just referring to the lack of the brand, as in slick skin.
Nevada, they call them slicks or Orianas. Down south, or maybe
Gotcha.
Texas, they call them Mavericks.
Mavericks. Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Makes sense. So that when you got here, I don't know if unkempt is the right word, but there was a lot of cleaning up to do herd wise then.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the main reasons, because there were some good cowboys here before I come, it was that they'd been in a 5-year drought. So there was 3 or 4 cows at every little seeping spring on the ranch to be able to keep their bellies full because the feed wasn't that good. And the first winter I was here, I mean, it snowed them mountains up, and they had to come down to the snow line. So then and they weren't poor, but they weren't strong. You know, they weren't skinny, but they weren't like they are in the spring in fighting shape. They could only go so far. They only had so much energy. So the opportunity to get them was there, so we did it.
And
Gotcha.
And geographically, you're kind of dealing with, there's not water everywhere. Matter of fact, before Scott got here, there was a lot of springs and old water, but also there's not a corral or a trap everywhere where you have cattle. So you're either having to drive them, and in some cases where you're a long ways away, there's no way you can get them to a trap. So you do have to rope them or lead them or get them to the road where you can get a truck and trailer in there. Sometimes tying down, 8 or 10 or 15, and then getting the trailer to them on the road to get them that way.
Yeah, it's like conquering a nation or eating an elephant, just a bit at a time. So if you had 5 big Orianas and these cattle have been missed for a couple of years and it's 18 miles to the closest corral, you might take, and they don't want to leave home. They know their backyard and how to get away, and that's why they're there. So you got to get them to the edge of what's known and maybe get them into the unknown to where they'll settle, get them to a road or whatever, and then tie them down or lead them out of their country.
Gotcha.
If they don't want to leave their country, sometimes you got to lead them off that mountain and get them loaded.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different skills you need.
You bet. Yeah. And you kind of alluded to it before. So doing all these jobs, what does your horse flesh look like in terms of how many you guys keep around and how you rotate them? And, what kind of, where are these horses coming from? What kind of horse do you need to do this job? Because it sounds like quite a bit of physical output is needed.
Yeah. So when I first come here, I worked for probably 12 years and trained horses and sold a lot of horses, and we was raising horses. So I had really nice horses when I first come here because I was always on that horsemanship journey, and I still am, but now I like them ones that nobody else likes. Got great big motors, and they can't ride them hard enough to even get them tired. And half thoroughbred horses or horses people ain't getting along with it, or maybe them blown up cutters. We've had some of them, or blown up show horses that are just huge, and it's easy to blow them up because they're so bred up now. But they've got huge motors. Horses somebody else ain't getting along with, I get along with the best because it don't take me very long before they don't want to run away anymore. Maybe to the trailer or to home, but
pretty handy.
Yeah.
And it's hard country. It's hard country on a horse out here. We've had really nice horses and sold them.
Just because you feel sorry for
them. You want to beat them up out here in the rocks all the time when, you could go show them somewhere at a cow horse show or a cutting, and here we are out there cowboying on them. They're nice, but, one broken leg, they're not so nice anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. How, what kind of string do you guys keep between the two of you?
We keep 6 apiece, tough ones. and usually a colt or two, or a corral horse that he don't need that pounding no more. So maybe like one good bridle horse that you could go rope in town on, or something. And we use them on easy days, which almost never happens because you think it's an easy day, and then somebody will foul that up for you. But or using them in the feedlot, or shipping cattle, or turning bulls out, or use them on those days, and not them rock crushers.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've never heard that term before.
Yeah, I like the ones that don't buck anymore. They just lawn dart me. So the ones that don't buck are the ones I like.
Yeah. So a little difference between the two of y'all then in preference.
I steal the horses once he gets them really good. That's how it works.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it
works. Yeah, Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm engaged. And my fiance rides quite a bit too, and we're getting married in September. But I'm starting to kind of learn how that dynamic works already. The whole get them nice, and then one day they're not yours anymore.
Can she shoe horses?
No, she does not shoe.
You know what why cowgirls smile when they walk down the aisle? Because they know they shop in the store.
That's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I like that. Cool. Well, I got more questions, but Ben, do you have anything? I know I've kind of been hogging them a little bit.
No, you're good. Go right ahead.
Okay. So another thing you mentioned earlier, it seems like you guys utilize dogs as well.
In the winter.
Is that true?
In the winter, Andrea's got dogs. I don't really like dogs because I can do everything a dog can do except for chase them the wrong way. But her dogs are pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, man after my own heart right there.
Yeah. But in the summer, you'd kill it.
Just because of the heat.
Too hot and too far to water. Yeah. And these cows, if you ever got these cows soft to dogs, the coyotes would kill all your cattle.
Okay. Well, so yeah, there's something because I'm no stock dog expert, but I've grown up around enough dogs where, to me, a dog is like having like a nuclear weapon in terms of stockmanship, right? Where it's like, if you got a really good dog, holy crap, you can get a lot done. But if you're not just dialed one way or the other, like you kind of mentioned, it can just all unravel. Like a dog can screw things up like 5 times faster than a human can.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so I guess my question there is, like, you already mentioned that a lot of times your cattle are so sensitive and so rangy. Like, how, I guess, are the dogs for those Angus cows you don't like, or like why?
No.
Like, it seems like you'd have to really have a handle on your dogs out in the open like that.
Just a dog that could read. Like my kind of dogs I used to have were just all stop 'em dogs. Because I can push a cow wherever she needs to go. But I needed something that could stop them. And
kind of help you roe deer more or less.
Yeah, and Andrea's dogs are more like bridle horses. You got to talk to them all day long. And then once they get out of hearing, they're on autopilot doing whatever they want, which is, some of them figure it out. But
now that's not exactly true. My dogs read cattle pretty good with pairs. They'll hide in the brush because our cows, we don't use dogs on them all the time. But the one thing I want to say about dogs, you can make a better cow and a better horse by using your horse, right? And I see a lot of people when you have cattle that want to get away or really move out, and they're like, gosh, that cow would be so much more respectful if you had a dog. Well, they're missing the whole point that if your cows will move away from you and you can move them, by going over to the right, not behind them, but, to their eye, that's not about disrespect on cows, but people get to the point where they use their dogs so much. And again, I feel like black cattle more need, they're less responsive to that. So I think a lot of people have went to dogs, with the intention that their dogs should be able to make these cows stop or move them because the cows won't move instead of letting a cowboy and a cow horse move those cattle. Does that make sense? So the dogs for us are not a big thing. They're nice to have in certain situations, but we'd rather do it at horseback. You make a good horse, working cattle.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And like you guys said earlier too, it's so area specific too, right? Because there's definitely places people run cattle where it's like, yeah, you could do everything horseback, but man, if you had a good dog, you could cut your time into like a fifth of what you'd have to spend on horseback, crawling through brush and creeks and stuff like that.
Forest,
yeah.
Mountain.
Them dogs too, it's just like your saddle horses. If you're jipping around, if you're not, they're site specific too, so much so that if you were going from ranch to ranch, you would have to have a string of dogs. You'd have to have in them trees chasing wild cows, you'd have to have a dog to tell you where he was at. Where Andrea's dogs don't bark. So if we got in the trees or the deep brush, you just have to, and there was enough moisture, there wasn't dust to see what was going on. I mean, you'd never find them. They might have a bunch of cows stopped and bringing them, but they can't find you to bring them to you. So,
yeah, no, that makes sense.
Site specific.
Yeah.
Well, and when it's just my wife and I in the wintertime and maybe re-riding and catching a few wieners that got missed or something, the dogs are really handy because they can hold them while we load the wieners or tie them down or what have you. And then, but we're talking like maybe an hour or two at the most and not all day in the heat kind of thing. Usually in the winter, there's a little snow on the ground to lick and it's cooler weather.
Gotcha. So, when we're talking about the loading the trailers and stuff, it sounds like you guys probably like rope and load them that way more often than, your traditionals like pens and then you put them on a ramp or do whatever. Like, is that true? Or like, how does you guys talk about loading cattle a lot, but it seems like there's not a lot of infrastructure. So how does that get done exactly?
Any way you can.
Okay.
We got a real good set of WW panels that are basically Mustang panels. We'll set up a trap and trap the cattle where they are versus taking them from where they are to where the trap is. Because a lot of times there's water at the trap, and then that gets grazed by wildlife, wild horses, wild burros, cattle. So maybe the feed is not there. So we will just set the trap up where we want the cows to be and trap them. If it's a big bunch, which a big bunch to us is 50 cows because it takes 10 square miles to run 50 cows, so.
Sure.
So that's a big day for us. But littler bunches like 20 or something, you might have 4 wieners, maybe a cull cow, maybe a cull bull to load. the other day, we just road-eared them right on the mountain and worked off them big wieners and picked up 2 gentle cows with them, and then just got to the trailer and we just held them. Took 30 minutes. Didn't pressure them at all. Just didn't let them ever go anywhere but the back of the trailer until one of them gentle cows jumped in, and them big slicks just loaded right with them. And one run back, we ended up having to rope in, but stockmanship's the same whether you got a corral or not. You just take the time it takes to get the job done, and then instead of inventing a next job, we win, we go home.
But on days where we have big bunches, we go to the corral. We either
set up a
corral or the trap that's there,
or a fence corner.
But on other days, and really a lot of times we will go through country. We'll go to the farthest end of the ranch, and then we'll kind of work our way back. But on the way home, you might see 2 or 3 that were up in a canyon or laying down or somewhere they got missed. So that's where it comes in a lot of times, where we have to stop and, trail them.
Yeah, because if you don't get them today, you're not going to see them tomorrow. They already either got missed or they outsmarted somebody that never even saw them the day before, maybe 2 days before. So you kind of get them when you can. Or it might be a year before you see them again.
Yeah. So rewind that for a second. So you guys said, now it sounds like it was just the 2 of you. You had you said 15 slicks or however many it was that
we had
4 of them, and then the two gentle cows.
2 gentle cows, and we had 8? 3 wieners that had been branded, or 4 wieners that had been branded, and 4 slicks that had been living up on the mountain, and we just got in with the gentler cows. So we held them up at where 2 creeks come together. There's a loafing area there. We held them up, the 4 of us, and then we let them work them slick cattle, because them big bulls that got missed last year, or their wieners wean them. They want to go breed because they still got nuts. So they were chasing a couple of young heifers that were branded, and so we worked them off and then left them cows at the mountain and then trailed them out a good 4.5, 5 miles to where the trailer was parked. So with the 2 gentle cows and them 8 calves, there was 10, and then the 4 of us would just hold them to where we could hold them. And it took a couple of times. They'd want to squirt and run, and we just put them back together and hold them. And then when they look away from you, just take the pressure off, and just kept getting closer and closer to the trailer. It took maybe 35 minutes, but it was faster than tying them all down or and then loading them all.
Sure.
And then load them that way. And sometimes you you can do that sometimes. And sometimes it don't matter what you do.
They're not going in.
Because they're individuals too. It just kind of depends on what mom taught them or how they act.
Yeah. Have you gotten better over the years at judging that?
Yes.
Of we can probably just load these, or if you got one, you got a rope, you can kind of smell it from a little farther off now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Experience. Good experience.
I bet.
Bad experience. Because anytime you get your rope down, especially if you have some green help, you run the risk of bad things happening. Crippling one or soring one up or losing them, or somebody getting bucked off by some big old snorty honky son of a gun running up there and hooking them. Your horse can't take that. I mean, you roll the dice.
How they were handled coming out, then they can get really mad.
Yeah, if we hadn't worked them out and then stopped them right away and stopped them 3 or 4 times coming down out of that canyon, because that's home. They knew every trail to get back to where they wanted to go, but we knew it too. At least Andrea and I did. The 2 young guys we had with us maybe didn't know the spooky places that you kind of had to be at before the cattle got there. The way we handled them out of there, and it was lucky by the time we got out of there, it got hot, and they didn't really want to go. Now, if it had been cold, we'd either had to trail them another 4 miles to the corral or tied them down. But it got hot, and just all those things came together to where we could load them.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Sounds like I guess that's anywhere, but it sounds like you guys deal with a lot of variables on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's like Christmas here. You don't know what's going to be under the tree. So you got to kind of have your toolbox ready.
Yeah.
You know, you might go up there and roll a donut and find a bunch of dry cows that need a bull. So then you go get a bull and trail them up there. You know, and that's maybe the best thing about it is it's not because I've always been one of them guys that when it's too tough for somebody else, it's just about right for me. So those outfits where you knew in 2 months what you were going to do on Tuesday, the 18th of August, because it was already, them cows go through this fence, or that just bored me to tears. Well, it just wasn't wild enough for me.
Yeah, so he quit.
Ah,
gotcha.
Yeah. Can get boring.
Yeah, or monotony. I couldn't keep engaged.
Yeah. It's a good thing that everybody is built a little different, because I'm sure there's some guys that couldn't handle your job. That would probably drive them crazy. They would want a playbook.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've had a lot of them, not a lot of them, but a few of them work for me that are just like, God, this is work. Well, if it ain't eating or sleeping, it's work anyway. So I guess if you enjoy it, it ain't work. And if you hate it, then yeah, it's miserable.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. So, we talked about hiring a little while ago. If somebody was, young and ambitious and they wanted to come, work at a place like you've got there, besides having, the ability to shut up and learn and have good work ethic, what are the handful of skills that you would tell that person to be working on and trying to learn before they were dumped into an outfit like yours?
Situational awareness. And by saying that, I mean, know their surroundings. Because there's so few guys now that can even follow directions, or if they're not driving, they can't find their way home at the end of the day. They don't even know where they're at. Or if they run into cell service and they hear that ding, 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 boy, they ain't looking out the window to see, the country or the cows, or, be engaged in whatever you're doing. I don't care if it's playing with that. Be as engaged in life as they are on them phones. That's, and I think, and that's probably in any job, situational awareness, just seeing, and sometimes you don't know till you know, but seeing the wreck before, that probably was what separates really good cowboys from mediocre cowboys, is being able to smell or sense that trouble ahead, or reading them cows, seeing, boy, that cow's really looking over there, so maybe I ought to look too and see what's going on. Maybe another guy's coming with some more, and that's just kind of gotten to be. I don't want to say a lost art, but people are very unaware anymore of their surroundings. I mean, you see it on the road, driving down the road. People blow through stop signs and miss the exit. They had 4 signs that told them you got to get off here, and I mean, not everybody, but
little things like learning how to track, and that is something that he's talking about situational awareness, right down to go up this road, go to the 2 track, because these guys already went ahead, and it's the 3rd one, blah blah blah, and then you don't know, but some people don't even know like how to look for the tire track of the people that went ahead of them 2 hours. They don't have that. Or if you're looking for cows and you're going to go up this great big canyon and it splits off. Look for fresh cow manure or footprints or, stuff that it seems super easy, but when they get out here, or the geography, look back. Look back all the time when you're trailing cattle for two reasons. One, because you're going to miss something. And two, look at the geography, because if you're going up in some big mountains and coming out, you can get really turned around and lost. And that's
and if bad shit happens, how am I going to get home?
How do I get to the road
how do I get back to that truck? Or how do I get to help?
Or the trap, for that matter.
Or even the corral that we just parked 2 stock trucks at, How do I get there?
Yeah, that's a really good point. For you in particular, Scott, is there anything that you feel like you had to work at and didn't come natural as you progressed along?
All of it.
Your journey in life to now?
I had to work at all of it. I had to work at it, but probably no natural talent at all. No. Yeah, I worked at all of it.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, how did y'all meet?
Just bad luck.
Oh, cowboy stuff. Working cows and
okay. Are you from Idaho as well?
No, I'm from Nevada.
Andrew?
Yeah, I grew up in Nevada.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So did you guys meet down here? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to work for her. Kind of like that Garth Brooks song.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh, he's bad. Yeah, and I was the boss back then, and man, he's getting me back threefold now. Working cows together. Yeah.
The Revenge of the Ranch Hand.
Right?
Coming around. That might have to be a new Garth Brooks song.
No kidding.
Well, I think we can find somebody.
Pick your artist. Maybe you're not into Garth anymore. Yeah.
No, not really.
Yeah.
So, do you miss Idaho? You ever thought of going back up there? You got family up there?
Oh yeah, all my family's there except for one brother that's, I think he's in Lebanon now, maybe. But I miss Idaho then. And if I'd have known now what I knew, or known then what I know now, I'd have stayed probably, because that was the nuts back then. There'd be 4 of us taking care of 8,000 or 9,000 yearlings and just rope all summer and work cattle and a rodeo every weekend, and then in the winter, go somewhere and start colts or braid rawhide or do whatever you wanted to do. Yeah, that was kind of easy deal and fun. But I'd always heard Nevada was, if you wanted to be a cowboy, you had to go to Nevada. And then I got down here and realized, but if you want to ride a horse that doesn't like you a long ways, then Nevada's the place to go.
Gosh.
We talked about some of the horses you guys, felt bad you'll sell them to someone that's going to show them or something like that. Have either of you guys dabbled in showing horses at all down in Nevada?
Yes, we both have.
Yeah. So like stock horse type shows?
Yeah, cow horse.
Cow horse, cutting, roping, big loop roping, and some of the regular classes that go with those big loop ropings, they have, like a stock horse class too. So we've done all that. Yeah.
Yeah, we've showed all of them. Snaffle bitters, Tacoma horses, 2-rein horses, bridle horses.
Cool.
4 events, cutting.
And was this all back in the horse training days you were talking about?
No, kind of pre-sea punch probably. And even just until a couple of years ago, Andrea still showed quite a bit. I just never had time. And kind of run out of them kind of horses because they weren't getting rode because you didn't want to kill
take them out there.
You know, you're riding them ones that you could get home on at the end of the day.
Yeah, I have a nice one right now that's not sound that I'm working on, trying to get sound so I can go show. So that's it.
Gotcha.
Yeah, Joe, it sounds like Scott might want to take up polo cross on those horses he's riding now.
Oh, yeah.
He's played a little polo cross, actually.
Yeah. You need a tough horse that's not afraid to get beat up or do some beating up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Sold her into. So I got a question for you guys. Did John tell you about our roping a little bit that we put on? Did you guys talk about
I don't think
Buckaroo
so.
Traditions Gathering? We started it last year. John
okay. I didn't put together that y'all ran that. But
And
okay.
the reason I wanted to bring that up is because the whole stockmanship, horsemanship thing, when we go, down to what's happening in the industry, we started that because we just saw, again, the industry itself, they want to process quick, they want to brand quick, they want to get them to the, to feed quick. And all these guys that we've cowboyed with that used to compete at the Californios that were great stockmen, and they still are, don't get me wrong, but they just all got so fast, and there was no road deer and handled the cattle as much as they were. It was more about getting them branded up so fast and not worrying about the pressure or, jumping one, running through the cat or through your road deer when you're branding and stuff. And so we just continued to see this. And we had roped in some big loop roping competitions. Scott's won quite a few, but all that stuff started going away with the ranch rodeos. Not that we're against ranch rodeos, but just the stockmanship and horsemanship. So we started that roping last year, basically for what we've talked about through this whole deal. Just to kind of showcase that again.
Yeah. So I actually, because John and those guys, they did a pretty good video kind of talking about the rules and everything. So yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Like, do you want to expand on what makes the roping different in terms of what the rules of the competition are?
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the rules of the competition is it's all judged by guys that can dang sure do it. And it's not so much about time. It's about stockmanship, roping when you needed to throw your rope, not setting everything up. More of a relaxed, showcasing that and the horsemanship quite a bit and teamwork.
So the time for us, you would time out. You don't get the fastest time doesn't win, because that's what's happened in my opinion a lot in the competitive industry for ranch rodeos and stuff, that it's all become about fast and get it done. And trust me, there's a lot of guys across the United States and in Nevada that are handy and can rope fast, but the whole respect for the animal and the horses kind of flown out the window in a lot of that. It just got fast and let's get it done. So we kind of wanted to bring that back, the authenticity of the stockmanship and horsemanship. And so that's kind of what we've done. And we brought in judges that have darn sure made a living, doing that are great horsemen and cowboys and buckaroos.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I've been around people in terms of the roping, like even proclaimed like ranch roping type stuff, and they'll put a really big emphasis on setting up shots, and as you kind of alluded to, like we've been talking this whole time, the way you guys do it, you're roe deered. You maybe don't have a ton of people, don't have hardly any fences. That's not near as practical, right?
No.
And yeah, so that's interesting because I think there are people out there who, when they get introduced to ranch roping, maybe someone in town who wants to get into it, and they're like, okay, I want to learn how to do ranch ropings and maybe like go to the neighbor's branding in the spring and compete at a couple big loops throughout the year. They will be taught about that shot setup and I guess manipulating the herd, right? More so than that will have a bigger emphasis than like you were talking about. Throw your rope when you're supposed to throw your rope. So yeah, can you talk about the importance of that a little more?
Yeah. When the shot presents itself, take it. To keep the integrity in your roe deer. So, like, you don't want to splash through the cows and chase one out the other way and then blow your roe deer apart and then have to go gather all those cows back up. So, and, a lot of people say it's a lot about fancy shots, but what they don't realize is them long shots or them so-called fancy shots was a necessity because the horses we rode, you're lucky if you can even get them 20 foot away from a cow. They just, you needed a buckler trophy just to be on him anyway, let alone trying to set a shot up because he didn't handle, or maybe he'd saw 30 other cowboys that they all thought they were Bobby Ingersoll and was going to fix him, but he didn't really have the brain to be fixed anyway. So,
yeah. Well, that was another thing John mentioned was, roping in the roe deer and then coming out on a long handle is pretty common compared to that's another thing that's taught in a lot of schools is taught is like, all right, neck him and then hang out until you're short and then we'll go heel, right? So can you talk about, one, you throw your rope when you're supposed to throw your rope as opposed to setting up a shot, but you guys also, it seems like, come out on a much longer handle than what some people would have been taught or would be used to.
Well, it would be more about coming out of the roe deer at whatever. I mean, if you're 10 feet away, cool. If you're 40 feet away, but get out of that roe deer. Because back in the day, you'd get your ass chewed if you stayed in there and splashed that roe deer around. Because them little calves are getting run over, and the cattle, I mean, if you're open roe deering them and holding them, you're just making it more work for everybody else. So get out of that roe deer. And then oftentimes somebody will come in there to heel him, and maybe that calf will jump and run by you. Boy, then you can pick your rope up and get 3 or 4, 1 or 10 coils or whatever you need to, and get short that way and then bend him to the fire. But yeah, get out of that roe deer.
Yeah.
I'm holding, if you rope them, no matter how far or close you are, when you get them dallied, just sit there for a minute. They're going to stop. Don't let them run back into the roe deer, and then go to the back end of it and then, splash that again because you're just teaching your cattle to go everywhere. So we just rope them and hold them on the front of it till they stop, and then maybe, walk your horse ahead or something, or try to get it out of that roe deer and get short as you're doing that, and then have your healer come in if they're not, you can't get them in there then. The whole idea is to keep the integrity of that roe deer, keep your cattle trained to stay back there and to keep them quiet. Just like, for us, if you've got to get those calves in the back that aren't branded, you don't just walk to the middle of the roe deer. You come out, you go to the back side, and you bring that calf out, and you rope it coming out. You don't go swinging your rope from the back end and just splashing everything. It's all stockmanship. It's all teaching your cows to be calm, your calves to move as well, and then rope it coming out. Don't rope it going in there, because then you're just going to make a big wreck.
Yeah, and it's more
Yeah.
because you gotta get him out of the road deer, but you also gotta wait for your healer to get in position. And maybe he's riding a colt, or maybe he's riding a bridle horse, or maybe he's got one. Maybe he likes to rope with some speed, or maybe they're a green roper and they rope real slow. So it's all about getting that calf caught one time and get him to the fire and get him laid down and get him branded and then get him back to his mom.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit like what we were talking about earlier with the Angus cows, how stuff like that is kind of, it's just lowered the stakes on a lot of
Yep.
places. And then now, like Joe was saying, with all the backyard ropers, and it's great. Like, no doubt, that's awesome that more people want to do it.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Stakes are a lot lower coming in. So it sounds like what you guys are doing is really cool to put on a competition where, great hands, but also someone who's gotten into ranch roping but wants to kind of step up their game can come there and be in a safe environment, but be judged in such a way that it's going to help them kind of raise the bar a little bit and get handier, get more aware of what a real hand ought to look like when he goes into a roping, versus roping in the backyard where the stakes are very low, even if you can throw a big fancy shot.
Yeah, I think for us, and we've done that. We had a lot of youth last year that watched that want to come in, and some people, and it's more about just learning that stockmanship because it's just going to make you better no matter where you go. Any kind of outfit or roping, you can read those cows and work them and have a good horse. It just all the way around is better for everybody.
Well, it's way more relaxed. It's
So
maybe somebody's green or new to it. It's way like our roping. Those kind of ropings, like the Skills of the Rancho or the Californios or the Great Basin Buckaroo Gathering or any of those ropings, people were very, they're more considerate, I guess is the word of, it's like a family reunion anyway. So everybody's real good job. And man, that was a tough cow. Boy, your horse looks better than the last time I saw him. And a lot of camaraderie and more relaxed. And, it was more about us and not us, not about, us as a whole, not this team versus that team.
So when is the next roping that you all are putting on?
It'll be November 15th through the 17th in Winnemucca, Nevada. So it's the third weekend in November. Yeah. We wanted to bring back some of the traditions that, the Great Basin has carried on for years as far as the stockmanship and horsemanship. And like you said, we don't let the people here a lot of times. It's not about throwing big loops here for us. It's, Scott, if these guys can throw one and they miss, he's like, let's just get them branded. We're not about that. But, there's a lot of proficient ropers that can throw that stuff in these branding pins because they can't get their horse close or, whatever, keep that calf quiet. Same stuff we're doing there, just trying to keep that tradition alive and really raise the bar on the stockmanship and horsemanship.
Yeah, that's great. It's funny. I saw a quote just yesterday, and it said, if you want there to be cool shit in your town, then do cool shit in your town. So I guess it's kind of like, if you want there to be a great ranch roping, then make a great ranch roping.
Yeah,
so that's awesome cool. That you guys are doing that.
Yeah.
I'll have to get down there sometime.
For anybody listening who maybe wants more information or wants to know when they can sign up and stuff like that, do you guys have a Facebook page, or how should they look into that if someone's listening right now and says, oh, I want to go to that come November?
You bet. We do have Facebook, Buckaroo Traditions Gathering. We have a website, btgathering.com. We have an Instagram. I think it's BT Gathering. And I don't know. My daughter does a lot of social media stuff. She does a great job. She always tells me I can't do it because I don't do a great job. But yeah, it's out there. Just type in Buckaroo Traditions Gathering and it'll show up somewhere.
Okay. Great. Cool. Well, Ben, you got anything else for him before we turn him loose?
No, I think that was great, and hopefully anybody that wants to get in on that goes and checks that out. But thank you guys. Great to meet you all.
Yeah.
Hear about your outfit.
You bet.
I hope we get to meet you guys someday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our fall work.
I think it'd be really cool to make it out to Winnemucca and watch that roping. What'd you say, Scott? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Our fall work starts the last weekend of September for about 5 or 6 weeks. So come on out.
You need 5 to 6 horses.
Yeah.
We got a good cook.
Okay.
Not me.
Okay. Well, maybe at some point.
Yeah,
that'd be awesome.
Honestly, that is like a bucket list item for me. I mean, I'd have to have a lot of things fall in place for me to go to Nevada for 5 to 6 weeks with 5 or 6 horses. But that sounds awesome. I'll put that on the bucket list one day. But it's been really cool hearing about y'all's deal, because John was highly complimentary of you guys. Said nothing but good things, and it was a great recommendation, because I know you guys aren't the only ones out there doing stuff like this, but it might not make it to the public eye all the time. So it's cool when we can highlight it and kind of let people know that there's folks out there practicing these skills and doing this stuff still. So hopefully this episode gets to educate a few people.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, cool. Well, we're going to stop recording, but don't hang up just yet.
Okay.